Hey there, it's Rachel Mullins, the host of Hashtag No Filter Fridays on Public House Media.
You're listening to Catch Up, an official news production of Public House Media.
Today is July 15th, and it's time to catch up on the news that you need to know about.
Today, we're helping you catch up on the U.S. carrying out the first federal execution in 17 years.
Increases in the United States daily COVID-19 cases.
Glee stars mourn over co-star Naya Rivera's death.
And as always, ending with a bit of good news for you today.
We're your hosts, Anna Herman
and Kylie Thompson. Welcome to Catch Up.
The federal government on Tuesday carried out its first execution in almost 2 decades, killing by lethal injection a man convicted of murdering an Arkansas family in a 1990s plot to build a whites-only nation in the Pacific Northwest. Here to talk more on this topic is official Catch-Up correspondent Bryce Berg. Thanks for joining us today, Bryce.
Thanks for having me, Anna.
So, Bryce, in this case, with it being the first federal execution in the U.S. in 17 years, how does this differ from others?
Well, usually executions at this point have been handled by the states, and states will take different approaches to it. That's part of the different constitutional rights that are extended to the states compared to the federal government. But given the nature of this crime being an interstate issue, as well as this crime being a hate crime in its nature, does have aspects of it that will require federal prosecution. This was handled by a federal prosecutor, which is why it came along that route. Now, this is an update because the federal government hasn't done it in so long, namely because of Obama regulations after a botched execution by the state of Oklahoma when Obama was still president. This has been the first time that we've seen the federal government try to reinstate this. It actually resulted in a 5-4 vote by the Supreme Court last Tuesday to go ahead with this process. So it's been a very interesting setup, on top of the fact that for the federal government that doesn't usually deal with this, they also have issues of trying to get the chemicals regarding the proper situation of executing a human being, which have been taken off the market by a number of countries that used to sell these specific combinations of chemicals to the U.S. and U.S. states for this purpose. So it's the first time in a long time that it's been done, but it was handled professionally by the group in Terre Haute, Indiana, for the execution.
So, given the controversy when it comes to execution and the death penalty, how is justice served?
It's difficult because when dealing with the ultimate punishment of removing somebody's life, you are punishing somebody by ending their life. You're not doing it in a way that is meant to be cruel and unusual regarding the pain of somebody that is being executed. And that pain has been often discussed and deliberated in terms of the constitutionality of whether or not the death penalty should exist. Now, when that comes around, this was a jury of his peers. He was found guilty through all processes. I know that there were some confusion about the equality of the sentences with the white supremacists that actually recruited him to be a part of that effort, and that his innocence was claimed even when he was being put into the final room where he was executed. So there are always questions about that kind of situation. But when dealing with justice as well, you're also dealing with how it impacts the victims. In this case, in a case that we actually haven't seen in over 50 years, the family members that have survived the victims themselves have publicly announced that they had no interest in pursuing the death penalty. So now as that kind of comes along, discussions come up about whether or not this is a victory for conservatives, whether or not this is a victory for justice systems, law enforcement agencies, the federal government, and how they choose to operate. Now it's become more politicized, and it makes it more difficult for the rights of the individual who's being executed to be done so in as humanely as possible, as well as what the victims want in this case. And it does come up for further discussion, especially because we haven't had this discussion in such a long time at the federal level.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for talking with us today and for joining us on Catch Up, Bryce.
Thanks for having me.
Coronavirus cases have risen by more than 1 million globally in just 5 days as the number continues to accelerate from week to week, according to research conducted by Johns Hopkins University. While some countries that were hit early in the outbreak have managed to contain the virus, the number of cases globally have been accelerating fairly steadily.
There have now been over 500,000 deaths from the virus worldwide, according to data from the Johns Hopkins University. And the World Health Organization's Director General, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, warned last week that there would be, quote, no return to the old normal for the foreseeable future, end quote. The Director General also stated that there are no shortcuts out of this pandemic, and that while we may hope for an effective vaccine, there must be a focus on using the tools that are available right now to suppress transmission and save lives, according to CNN.
Ghebreyesus went on to say, quote, we need to reach a sustainable situation where we do have adequate control of the virus without shutting down our lives entirely or lurching from lockdown to lockdown, end quote. And also explain that there is a roadmap to a situation where we can control the disease and get on with our lives, but it would require 3 things: a focus on reducing mortality and suppressing transmission, an empowered, engaged community, and a strong government leadership and communication.
Ghebreyesus ended his statement with, let me be blunt. Too many countries are headed in the wrong direction. If governments do not clearly communicate with their citizens and roll out a comprehensive strategy focused on suppressing transmission and saving lives, if populations do not follow the basic principles of physical distancing, hand washing, wearing masks, there is only one way this is going to go. It's going to get worse and worse and worse, but it does not have to be this way. He added, it's never too late to bring the virus under control, even if there has been explosive transmission.
And Kylie, I know that social distancing and everything surrounding the coronavirus is really hard to kind of change into this new normal. And I know that you're a waitress. You see a lot of people aren't going out wearing masks and everything like that. How does that affect you in your line of work?
So I've been back at work for, 8 weeks now. And when we first opened, we really didn't know what to expect. I kind of figured because people were coming in to eat that they weren't going to be wearing masks, which has pretty much been the case. And it's kind of hard being in this line of work right now. Despite me wearing a mask, I'm still putting myself at risk getting in contact with the virus. So it's taken pretty seriously in the food industry right now, and we're all doing the best that we can to keep tables social distanced. And when people come in wearing masks, I'm like, thank you. It's so great to see people doing that, just because I'm based in Green Bay, and that has been something even outside of my line of work that I'm just not seeing a lot. Right now, it's really hard to know what the future is going to look like when it comes to restaurants in COVID, and I'm hoping that I will remain employed for as long as this is going on and stuff.
Right.
But yeah, it's been really, really crazy.
Yeah, it is really crazy. And speaking of really crazy, so I know that you and I are both big fans of Glee, and this upcoming story is absolutely heartbreaking with what happened to Naya Rivera.
I know. I can't even imagine what her family and friends and former co-stars are going through, especially since Rivera's body was found on the 7th anniversary of their other co-star, Corey Monteith's death. And when I read that, I had goosebumps all over.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. And it was a heartbreaking scene at Lake Piru on Monday as Heather Morris and other Glee cast members gathered together at the site where their former co-star Naya Rivera went missing. According to People, Heather Morris, who played Rivera's love interest on the musical comedy series, was at the lake and arrived with friends.
ABC 7 captured images of Morris and several others standing hand in hand as they looked out onto the body of water where Rivera was last seen. Terrence Green, who was a part of the group, shared multiple posts to his Instagram story from the day. In the first, he extended his arm into the lake and captioned the photo with a dove and a broken heart emoji. And in the third slide, he wrote, "We called out to you this morning. You answered."
During a press conference on Monday, Sheriff Bill Ayubi of Ventura County Sheriff's Office said, quote, "It has been an extremely difficult time for her family throughout this ordeal. Our hearts are with them, and we share their grief for Naya's loss," end quote. Ventura County Sheriff Sergeant Kevin Donahue also expressed that although the events that led to Rivera's death were, quote, "still a mystery," there was no reason to suspect foul play or suicide.
All right, now moving on to our good news for the day. This is a really heartwarming story. COVID-19 has taken its toll on all of us in many ways, but for a nursing home in northern London, they're working hard to have fun in a time where family and friends are not allowed to visit.
Robert Specker has been in charge of keeping residents entertained throughout these past few months and decided to use his love of photography and art to put together a fun project, recreating popular album covers.
In an interview recently, Speaker said, as the situation is ongoing, it could be months before the situation changes for them, and the need to keep them happy, entertained, and full of spirit has never been more crucial. It's been my job and my privilege.
The photo shoot nailed iconic covers like Adele's 21, The Clash, London's Calling, and David Bowie's Aladdin Sane, which featured Roma Cohen recreating David Bowie's iconic Ziggy Stardust character. Julia Davey, manager of the nursing home, said Mr. Speaker is, quote, well known locally for organizing activities that are outside of the box. The shoot has gone viral after Speaker shared it to Twitter with fans clamoring to buy a calendar.
I know if they make one, I will definitely be making a purchase because these pictures are the cutest thing ever.
Me as well. Absolutely iconic.
Thank you for catching up on today's news with us. I'm Kylie Thompson.
And I'm Anna Herman. Please be sure to catch up with us again tomorrow.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts.
We appreciate you listening to Catch Up. For even more content, follow Catch Up Digital on social media. Just search for @TimeForCatchup.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on any of the stories we covered today. Just use the hashtag #PassTheCatchup on social media.
Catch Up is an official production of Public House Media.